Hey, we're taking a look at classic rock in movies right here on the Classic Rock Echoes podcast. I'm Johnny Bottles. This is Motorhead. Let's play our song.
Woo!
All righty. We are here live through the power of Wi-Fi right here on the YouTubes. I'm joined by my West Coast brethren, the mighty Motorhead 711, the king of the SCM. Motor, how you feeling today?
Pretty good, Mr. Bottle, sir. Not too bad. It's a blustery 92 degrees out here in Northern California and a slight breeze, but other than that, everything is going along well. Picked up Mrs. Motor from work. She's relaxing now, watching some horror movies. So everything is good. How you doing on your end?
I just fought off a den of bees, a nest of bees, if you will. They got me pretty good. So let's
bastards.
Enough of my flipping problems. Let's go right into it. What are we covering today, Motorhead?
Today we're going to cover rock in movies and a couple soundtracks we're going to go through. We're going to talk about a few of our films that we liked, enjoyed when we were growing up watching, and some of the bands that grace the presence of the screen on some of these films. So the first one I'd like to bring up is a real classic, and I'm wearing the shirt of the band that is in this movie, Rock and Roll High School.
Rock and roll high school.
That's right. PJ Souls, she plays Riff Randall, their biggest fan.
Yes.
She's the one that tries to get the Ramones to come to the school, and they do. One of the greatest clips in that movie is when they're going down the hallway and they're singing along, playing their tunes, and everybody's behind them rocking out. Ramones, if you haven't heard them, you must be living under a rock or on the planet Venus or something, because they've been an instrumental part of rock music, punk rock, if you will, since the 70s, mid-70s, and blazed a trail for many other bands. But this film, Bottles, what would you say about this film as far as watching viewership? Like, is it exciting? Is it kind of cheesy? Is it kind of a bit of both?
A little bit of both, I would say. It's a Roger Corman produced film. Roger Corman was famous for all those old Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, Edgar Allan Poe horror movies back in the late 50s, early 60s, such as The Pit and the Pendulum, The Raven, things like that. And he also did Little Shop of Horrors. And his filmography as a producer and director is too numerous to count. We could do an entire classic movie echoes podcast if we were going to do a movie podcast about Roger Corman. It's just a phenomenal amount of films that man's responsible for. In this movie, like you said, PJ Souls, who was in Halloween, and she was also in what other movie? The biggest movie she was ever in, I would say.
Good Old Stripes with Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. One of my favorite Bill Murray films ever. And she played one heck of a part as being a female MP there at the base. They get into some shenanigans, Mr. Harold Ramis and Bill Murray, and they get in trouble and end up pretty much nailing these chicks.
You can't say anything else other than that. Yeah. The great Clint Howard, Ron Howard's ugly brother, was in this as Eagle Bauer. Vince Van Patten, the son of Dick Van Patten, was the male lead, the pretty boy. Tom Roberts was his name. Also, let's see, the Ramones naturally were all in this. Marky, Dee Dee, Johnny and Joey. And Dick Miller. Dick Miller is a famous character actor. He always played a gangster, an Italian-looking gangster. I think he's no longer with us right now. But Dick Miller was in the movie also as the chief of police, ironically enough. He always played a mafioso type or a gunman. But he was the chief of police in this. Directed and written by... No, it was written by Joe Dante. Joe Dante, the man who directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes,
and
sir.
Gremlins, Joe Dante. And Alan Arkish, which was a famous comedy writer and producer at the time. It was directed also by Alan Arkish. So, music was by Ed Stasium, who was the Ramones producer for a few other albums. He was also, wasn't he the label head of, no, he was the label head. He was some executive over at Sire Records, the Ramones record label.
Yeah.
Sire Records, yeah. It's a set in 1980, Vince Lombardi High School. It's a 1979 film. They keep losing principals due to nervous breakdowns because of the students' love of rock and roll and their disregard for education. The leader of the students, Riff Randall, PJ Souls, of course. She was the biggest Ramones fan at the school and also the worst behavior problem. Disciplinary record fills up an entire filing cabinet. But anyway, be that as it may, the songs that were on this album were fantastic. Naturally, the eponymous tune, Rock and Roll High School, I Want You Around, a cover of Come On Let's Go, the old Richie Valens song, also covered by Los Lobos, tune. A live medley of the Ramones songs Blitzkrieg Bop, Teenage Lobotomy, California Sun, Pinhead, She's the One. So It Goes by Nick Lowe was also one there. Brian Eno, the keyboard player for Roxy Music. And he also collaborated a lot with David Bowie. He was also on the album with the song Energy Fool's a Musician. Side 2 of the LP, Smoking in a Boys Room, Brownsville Station, one of my favorites.
Great band out of Texas.
School Days, Chuck Berry, A Dream Goes On Forever by Todd Rundgren, and fittingly, School's Out by the Crypt Keeper himself, Alice Cooper.
Yes.
Who's still doing it today. What, 74, 75 years old? He's still rolling.
Doing it, still trucking along, and still playing golf, too. Still playing
50
golf.
years later, buddy. 50 years later.
Yeah. Reading one of his books that he put out, he actually says that golf saved his life because he was, bad alcoholic, going through real serious alcohol problems. And one of his roadies kept going to these golf courses every town they'd go in. And he's like, "Where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going to go play golf. You should go check it out one of these days." And Alice was like, "Golf? Come on. That's no." And he goes, "Well, okay, well, just come check it out." So Alice went out there a couple times, watched it. Pretty soon bought his own clubs, stopped drinking. He hasn't drank ever since.
And he was also good friends through golf with Dean Martin.
That's right.
And Glenn Campbell. He was very, very famous friends with Glenn Campbell.
Cowboy.
Yes, indeedy. Yes, indeed. He had to steer clear of Glenn at certain times of the day when Glenn and Dean would knock him back. Yes, he had to. Oh, fellas, easy now. Easy, cowboy.
Bottles, what was that show that night? It was one of the talk shows at night, and Dean Martin was just shit-faced, holding his drink. I can't remember what it was, but I've seen clips of it before. I don't know if it was Johnny Carson.
It was Johnny Carson.
It was
Johnny Carson, and he was interviewing Bob Hope.
Yes,
that was the guest.
That's the one.
And Dean Martin strolled out in a yellow shirt and a white leisure suit. If you remember leisure suits, folks, with a drink in his hand and a cigarette, and he was stoned to the bejesus when he came out. And he was if he wasn't completely smashed, he was well on his way.
Yep.
He was driving that roller coaster down the hill from sobriety. And look it up on YouTube, folks. It's comedy gold right there. Comedy gold.
Clip.
What's the next movie, Motor?
This one is from 1987. Eat the Rich. With
Eat the Rich.
Lemmy from Motorhead is in this. He plays a character named Spider, and it's a movie based pretty much on the song "Eat the Rich." It's how the underprivileged, the hardworking, the working class do whatever they can to try to take out the rich people, and put themselves in roles of prominence after that. Another great soundtrack on that one. Motorhead songs, of course, but there's some really, really great clips in there of Lemmy acting. He actually does a pretty damn good job. This film is it's not something you put the family together and watch, because if you have kids, they'll probably walk away and say this is stupid. But just the fact that Lemmy's in there and he acts accordingly, and you can tell it's Lemmy, but he plays the character Spider. Does a great job. There's some good live clips or semi-live clips of the band of Motorhead playing in there. One of my favorites to watch when it's a rainy Sunday or something like that, just to get a good laugh, because there's some pretty good comedy parts in there too.
I'm just looking down the cast right now. It's a who's
Pretty
who.
good cast too.
It's a
Yeah,
musical.
yeah.
A lot of famous. It's a British film. It's a black
Mhm.
comedy from 1987. Miranda Richardson is in it. Jules Holland, the keyboard player for Squeeze, is in as a reporter. Bill Wyman, former bass player for the Rolling Stones, is in this, and he's billed as toilet victim. Toilet victim.
Think about that, folks. Toilet victim.
Sandy Shaw, a British pop chanteuse from the mid 60s, who originally had a hit with Always Something There to Remind Me, and a slew of other hits over in Britain. Didn't do much over here in America. Virtually nothing, but she was a big star over in Great Britain. Lemmy plays Spider in the movie. Paul McCartney is a guest at a banquet. Hugh Cornwell, the lead singer for the Stranglers, is in the movie. And Rick Mayall, English comedian, actor, and writer, the guy who was Drop Dead Fred in the movie Drop Dead Fred. A lot of people remember that. It was an American movie. They thought he was going to be the next big thing over here in America. Didn't go that way. Robbie Coltrane. Robbie Coltrane played Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies. This is one of his first films. Robbie Coltrane was in the movie. And Shane MacGowan, the lead singer for the Pogues, who had a hit with Yeah, Yeah, Yeah and Fairy Tale in New York, which is played sometimes around the globe, mostly over in Europe, around Christmas time.
Yeah. Good.
So, yeah, it performed poorly at the box office. Only took $200,000 in at 4 screens across the United States. It's a British film, though. Of course, it's a black comedy. A lot of people, in America they don't get the black comedy sensibilities of the British. So,
Right.
What do you got next, Motor? We're rifling through these, baby. Let's go.
Up next is a this time of year classic, as far as I'm concerned. It plays all over the United States in various theaters. Became a cult classic when it first was released. Was not received too well by a lot of the American public. The Rocky Horror Picture Show. Meatloaf plays a character named Eddie in there, and does a damn fine job. Sings and acts as well. Great soundtrack. All original songs, pretty much. Do the Time Warp. That's a timeless classic. And then good old Frankfurter, my man, right there.
Frankenfurter, yes.
Frankenfurter. His character was one of the reasons why I believe it didn't get received so well when it came out. Of course, because at the times, that wasn't cool to be that type of
a transvestite. Yes, it wasn't cool to be a transvestite, as they used to call that back then. That's an antiquated term right now, not politically correct, but back at the time, in the flavor of what year was this? 1974. That's the term that was used back then. It's a historical term. YouTube, don't give us a strike because we use the word transvestite. They're a little finicky about things like that nowadays. Also in that cast was Susan Sarandon. She was the female lead, and we know about her body of work right now. Famous Hollywood actress, award-winning actress, famous for probably Thelma and Louise, maybe her biggest role.
Also in Bull Durham. She was
and Bull
great
Durham.
in Bull Durham.
Yes,
Excellent.
yes.
Mhm.
She married Tim Robertson. Tim Robert, the guy who was in he was
Roberts,
a star.
the guy from
Tim
Shawshank
Roberts.
Redemption.
Shawshank, yes.
Yes.
Barry Bostwick was the male lead. Barry Bostwick was a handsome young man. They thought he was going to be a big rising star as a handsome matinee idol in Hollywood. His career didn't go that big in the movies. He found a huge career on TV back in those days. Now you see him on TV in reverse mortgage commercials and playing a president, a judge, an older authority figure, things like that. And also, like we said, the aforementioned Meatloaf was Eddie, a former
Mr. Loaf.
delivery boy, or Mr. Loaf, Marvin Lee Day, if you will.
If you will.
If you will. That's where he got his big break. Beat in that.
Oh, yeah.
So-
And like we were talking about earlier, Paradise by the Dashboard Lights, and from Meatloaf, a classic song of his that I enjoy and listen to quite often. And you were telling me a story about when you and your wife go out drinking. What was that, Model?
I can't tell you that story because she's home right now. but that is her favorite song, her favorite song of all time, "Paradise" by the Dashboard Light. Yes, I'll go this far when we go out and we have a few cocktails and she's shooting pool. I go in the TouchTune app for the jukeboxes around the watering holes in my area, and we'll play "Paradise" by the Dashboard Light, and she loves that song, and
Great
it's
tune.
a adrenaline boost for her.
And Meatloaf did, he
Yes.
played that role in Wayne's World. Tiny the doorman at the gas works. Anything that I've ever seen him act in, he does a pretty damn good job. But
He does do a
Tim
good
Curry,
job, yes.
Tim Curry, you couldn't have put anybody better to play Frankfurter than Tim Curry. He made that film for me, front to back. And even the very first time I saw it, I was probably 12 years old. And I remember my mom coming in going, "What the hell?" It was on HBO. She's like, "What are you guys watching?" I said, "This is the Rocky Horror Picture Show." She goes, "Horror?" I said, "No, horror, like scary." She goes, "This is terrible." Like, "No, we like it." Me and my brother sat, watched the whole thing, probably watched it 3 or 4 times that summer because we thought Tim Curry was great. We didn't care the way he was dressed and stuff like
Right.
that. We
Right.
didn't even know what we just thought it was some dude dressing up in drag, and dressing up in chicks' clothes. But we love that movie. I love that movie. Love the tunes in it. And Tim Curry, kudos to him. He's not doing too well now, but man, what a legacy he's going to leave once he does finally leave here. But
Yeah,
excellent film.
that career's been derailed by a massive stroke
Yeah,
or a
poor
series
guy.
of strokes. He's wheelchair bound. He was paralyzed, couldn't speak at one point in time. There's some
Yeah.
interviews with him on YouTube post stroke. In varying degrees of rehabilitation, and a
guy.
great actor, a great performer, and I wish him all the best. What do you got next, Motor?
Next, another one of my all-time personal favorites in the category of cheesy. It probably lists in the top echelon of cheesy films, but I love it to death. Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park. It was a made-for-TV movie with all 4 members of Kiss: Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, Peter Criss. Takes place at Magic Mountain Amusement Park in Valencia, California. It's like late 70s, I believe 78, I think it came out. 77,
Yes,
78.
as a matter of fact, yes, you're correct.
Yeah, and
And you know who? You know what company produced that? By the way, I just saw this.
oh god,
Amazingly enough, Hanna-Barbera Productions, the cartoon company, produced Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
That's kind of funny too, because at that time in the 70s at Magic Mountain Amusement Park, a lot of the Hanna-Barbera characters were running around that park. People dressed up like what was it, Jabberjaws, and
Yes.
yeah. So movie takes place at amusement park. Kiss is doing a concert there, and they actually did do a concert there at Magic Mountain at that time. So and I have a live CD of it, and I also have a video of it. The footage is terrible, but I got it from a guy on the internet. Anyways, it's Kiss playing. There's a guy named Abner Devereaux who is the owner and basically the designer of the park, and he builds all these animatronic things, and he's getting really upset because of this Kiss concert. They're using all this money, they're using all this funding, no one's paying attention to his robots. So he gets pissed off and has one of his robot clone human people go take a picture of all the Kiss members, and then he ends up making robots out of Kiss, like an evil Kiss. And they go after Kiss, and then they destroy parts of the park, and everybody thinks it's Kiss. So the real Kiss gets a bad image because of these robots. In the end, they end up fighting. It's an epic battle on stage. Oh my God. It is cheesy, but I love it, and it is absolutely hilarious to watch. And the acting from the guys, Ace Frehley's the best because a lot of times he don't even say a word. He just makes sounds. Like he always does.
Yes. I remember I was working at a liquor store back in those days, a fresh-faced young man, probably about 100 pounds lighter than what I am right now. I was a waif, and I was bagging the booze, the cigarettes, the beer, and all of a sudden the TV behind me, on top of the cigarette case where we had it perched, what we would watch when there was nobody in the store, Peter Criss is singing Beth. in Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. And they weren't really that well known back then, believe it or not. And one of the customers is paying for it. And he goes, "What is that?" Catman makeup, the lipstick, the whole getup, singing "Beth, I Hear You Calling, but I can't come home right now." It was a little bizarre. I said, "That's Kiss." "Who?" "Kiss." "If you say so." Grab his shit. Got it. And I'm going, is it wrong of me to like this?
Yeah,
Absolutely not. They're highly regarded as a guilty pleasure. Kiss is, and actually pretty good musicians if you think about it. Pretty good musicians.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Peter
another
Criss,
band that stood the test of time.
Peter Criss was a underrated vocalist and a very, very underrated drummer.
Yes, sir.
In Europe, it was called Attack of the Phantoms. In Italy, it was called Kiss Phantoms. And Abner Devereaux was played by character actor Anthony Zerbe. Anthony Zerbe, you would know from many roles. Just a phenomenal amount of roles. He was in The Omega Man in 1971, which he starred alongside of Charlton Heston. Yes, he was the bad guy in that. He's a famous bad guy, or a heavy, as they used to say. He was a heavy, which is like a heel in the world of professional wrestling. He was in the James Bond film License to Kill. He was in Star Trek Insurrection. He was in The Dead Zone, Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions. He went on to star in TV series such as Naked City, The Virginian, Kung Fu, The Big Valley, Route 66, The Wild Wild West, one of my personal favorites. Picture James Bond in The Wild Wild West, and that's that show. 12 O'Clock High, Bonanza, Mission Impossible, Gunsmoke, Hawaii Five-0, Mannix, It Takes a Thief, The Chisholm's Ironside, The FBI, The Rookies, The Rockford Files, Dynasty, and Columbo. So, amazing. Yes. Huge career.
And I do recall seeing him on certain TV shows back in the day, too. And like you said, he always played a bad guy. He had that look. He just has this look on his face like he's evil. He's bad person.
Yes.
Good actor. Great one.
A fantastic actor. Fantastic actor. What was on the soundtrack of this? Let's go down the soundtrack. Okay. I'm looking for the American release of it. I see the European release. I only have the music listing from the European release of the film. It had Rock and Roll All Night, Shout It Out Loud, Beth, Hold Me, Touch Me, New York Groove by Ace Frehley, of course.
Love that song.
Let's see. Love in Chains, I Stole Your Love. Radioactive, which was a Gene Simmons song off of his solo album. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hotter Than Hell with different lyrics. It was called Rip and Destroy back then.
Rip and Destroy, and that's one part that I loved in the movie. The Gene's up there singing "Rip, Rip, Rip and Destroy," and they're showing the people in the crowd, and you can hear like these dubbed-in voices. Yeah, let's get it. Let's burn this place to the ground. And they're going crazy. The crowds are going crazy, and the other park managers look like, oh no, what have we done? Kiss is going to have these people destroy the park. And then that's when the real Kiss come in and start kicking the living shit out of the robot Kiss. It's epic. I mean, I had no idea that Ace Frehley knew karate. No idea, but man, what a kick he had. Excellent.
Back then, Ace Frehley didn't know who he was, let alone knowing karate.
There's a reason why he was called the Space Ace, and for very good measure. Mm-hmm.
Jack Daniels, left-handed cigarettes, and a little bit of acid.
Yep. God bless you. Love Ace.
Motor, what else you got?
Oh, one of the movies that I watch all the time, probably 2 or 3 times a month. This is Spinal Tap. Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer play this band called Spinal Tap, directed by Rob Reiner. Came out in 1984. This is a movie that when I first saw it, like I said, I thought they were a real band. And I was really getting into music at that time. I was 11 years old and was getting into all kinds of music. That's like right around the time I really started to listen to a lot of rock. Heavy metal was going full force. I started getting into Maiden, AC/DC. And here comes this movie I got to see, and I'm like, what the Spinal Tap? I'm like, how come I've never heard of them? And I used to get magazines, never heard of the band. I'm like, and I thought they were real. Didn't take to, several years later, I found out that it was actually documentary, mockumentary, about life on the road with the loudest rock band in the world and what happens, things that go wrong all the time. Another scene in Spinal Tap, or one scene that I particularly like too, they do a song called Stonehenge, and David St. Hubbins brings this. He's got this idea, and he gives it to their manager, Ian. Well, Ian takes it to this designer lady, and they want to make this like miniature-looking Stonehenge thing. Well, he writes the wrong marks by the numbers. So instead of saying 12 feet, it says 12 inches. And so the guys in the band don't see the prop. They know it's done. Ian didn't even see, that's their manager. He didn't even see the prop. So all of a sudden they start playing Stonehenge, and it's like the middle of the song, and they're looking up, and here comes this 12-inch replica of one of the rocks at Stonehenge, and it's going down, it's falling on the stage, and they're like just mortified because their 12-foot giant Stonehenge prop is now only 12 inches long, because that's what one of the guys from the band wrote on the napkin to give to Ian. They weren't smart enough to put feet, so they put inches. So now they got dwarves, little dwarves dressed like this with their little hats, and they're dancing around this tiny little Stonehenge monument, and it falls over. Long story short, the whole movie's about almost real things that actually happen to rock and roll bands during concerts, touring, all kinds of stuff. Great soundtrack, all done by Harry Shearer, Christopher Guest, and Michael McKean. They all learned, and we were talking about this earlier, two bottles. Michael
when
McKean,
we try to do this the first time.
Yes, when we try to do this the first time.
We're lucky the lights are
McKean,
on. Look, you can see the corner of the bed over here. Look at this shit.
Yep. Oh, hey, there it is.
Yeah.
Michael McKean was Lenny from Laverne and Shirley, Lenny and Squiggy, and he was in a great band with Squiggy called Lenny and the Squigtones.
Of course.
So he's been, when I looked at his bio and stuff, he's been playing musical instruments for a long time. But Spinal Tap, if you haven't seen it, watch it. If you know anything about touring and rock bands and stories you've heard about things that happen on the road or behind the stage, check out the movie. You won't be disappointed. There's some, I say quotes from that movie damn near every day. Every day. They have an album. So they're trying to come up with a new idea for an album because the record company won't produce the one that they want. It's called Smell the Glove, and the picture is like this guy, and they got a naked woman on the ground, and he's holding up like a glove for her to smell the glove. And the record company says, no, we're not going to produce that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to put that out there. It's too much. It's too much. So their manager, Ian, he's like, well, what are we supposed to do? And he's talking to Fran Dresser. Fran Dresser is one of the characters in there. She's
the nanny, yes.
Yeah, the nanny. Peggy Flankman. And
Bobby Fleckman.
Bobby Flankman. And she goes, look, the White Album, what is that? And their manager, Ian, starts thinking. So what he does is he makes an all black album. The whole thing is black. There's no picture. There's no line. There's no song titles. It's just a black record. Goes to the record store, gets in there. They do an autograph signing. Nobody shows up. But a great film, classic film. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap.
I'm looking at the cast. All these, they have a lot of big Hollywood stars. Well, big now, of course. And bit parts in this movie because they're friends with the guys who played the band in Spinal Tap. Fred Willard, a guy from the Ace Trucking Company, Second City TV.
So hilarious.
He's several movies you've seen Fred Willard in. If you saw his face, you would know right away. Angelica Houston, who used to be semi-engaged to Jack Nicholson, his girlfriend for like 3 decades. And she's also related to Walter Houston and John Huston, famous directors in Hollywood and actors. Paul Schaefer, the keyboard player for the David Letterman's band when he was on TV, when he had his talk show. Patrick McNee, John Steed from the Avengers TV series, not the Iron Man and Hulk Avengers. Emma Peel and John Steed, Avengers, a British TV series about secret agents.
Great series.
Dana Carvey played a waiter who was a mime. Mm-hmm. Billy Crystal played Morty the Mime. Paul Benedict, who was the British white upstairs neighbor of the Jeffersons, who was a comedic foil for George Jefferson. He was in it. Dr. Johnny Fever, Howard Hessman from WKRP in Cincinnati, played Terry Ladd. He was in the movie. And Russ Kunkel, a noted drummer for the Southern California rock group scene. He was a drummer for James Taylor. He was a drummer for Ry Cooder. He was a drummer big time for Linda Ronstadt. A lot of tours, a lot of albums with Ronstadt. Bald in the front, long blonde mullet in the back, a la Hulk Hogan. Very Hogan-esque haircut. Fran Drescher, like Motor said, is in this, is Bobby Fleckman. Danny Korchmar, who is a Southern California studio musician, guitarist, and touring guitarist for James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt. He's been on tons of albums by all of them. If you heard any of their songs, you would know Danny Korchmar is the guy who played guitar on it with Waddy Wachtel. Waddy Wachtel's not in the movie though. And Rob Reiner plays the director of the documentary that they're filming. He was also the director of the movie. Harry Shearer as Derek Smalls was he was on Saturday Night Live. He did Weekend Update. He was on there for a cup of coffee. Went off on his own. He joined The Simpsons. He does a ton of voices on The Simpsons as two of the most notable, Mr. Burns and Smithers, his assistant. Christopher Guest, Mr. Jamie Lee Curtis. He's been in a ton of TV series. He was also on Saturday Night Live. That's where he met Harry. And Michael McKean, who we said was Lenny on Laverne and Shirley, the tall, blonde-haired guy.
Also Saturday Night Live for a while.
Also Saturday Night Live. That's where those three guys met, and they actually formed a little repertory company where they did a series of movies. And a lot of it was music-related. The Almighty Wind, which
oh
is
my God, I love that one.
a faux documentary about a Kingston Trio type of folk rock group. And
about
what was the one about
movement?
What about a doll? It was something about
Best in Show.
Best in Show. Yes,
that movie kicks ass too. All those ones, they get all the same people in there, and they're just the Fred Willard in Best of Show is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, man. That guy is so funny. I just look at his face and I just start laughing. He doesn't have to say anything.
Fred was a funny man. Fred also had a little problems later in life. He got locked up when he was in his 70s. He did a Pee Wee Herman at an X-rated movie theater. If you know what I'm saying, folks, I won't go into detail.
Yeah.
Well, he was caught waxing his carrot, so to speak.
Yeah.
Working
Punching
his
the
man.
clown.
He was punching the puppet at an X-rated movie theater. So, yeah. All right, what you got next, Motor?
Well, those movies are pretty much the ones that I would like to go or wanted to go over. But now I just want to talk about a couple of soundtracks because
yes,
soundtracks were very important in a lot of movies. We're seeing it nowadays too. Recently, both Guardians of the Galaxy got killer soundtrack. They did a remake of not 101 Dalmatians, but the lady, the bad lady that's in 101 Dalmatians. I can't think of the name of the film, but that they did an actual movie on that, and the gal in it is
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone, yeah. That soundtrack's phenomenal. But some soundtracks, like if I feel if they weren't in the movie, it wouldn't have made the movie as good as it was. For example, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh,
that soundtrack kicked butt. The Jackson Browne song. Anytime that comes on the radio, I always think about that movie. It's one of those ones that it fit the time, it fit the scene, and it made a lasting impression.
Jackson Browne came out with that live album that he recorded at Meriwether Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland. What was it called? Running on Empty? Was that the actual name of the album?
Running on Empty. I believe, yeah, you're right.
Yes. And it was a live album. Some of the songs he recorded during sound checks. Running on Empty is probably the most famous song. Then he did a song called The Loadout / Stay, the old Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs doo-wop song.
Ooh.
They were the two singles off that album that made it big. And he needed a follow-up. He needed a hit, a studio hit. And he came up with Somebody's Baby, which was the lead-off song with the soundtrack, written by Jackson Browne and the aforementioned Danny Korchmar, the guitarist. And it was a hit, a big hit for Jackson Browne, top 10
Big
off
hit.
of this soundtrack, off this movie. The other songs on the album were Waffle Stomp by the crazy man Joe Walsh. Love Rules by Don Henley, which he wrote again with Danny Korchmar. Uptown Boys, which is a song by Louise Goffin, who is the daughter of Carole King and Jerry Goffin. Carole King sang and wrote many, many songs. One Fine Day, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, a lot of rock and roll hits that you really don't associate with her. She was a babysitter, and at 16, and she had a gift for music, and she got hooked up with the Brill Building, which we should do in another Classic Rock Echoes podcast. The history of the Brill Building. It's amazing. Yeah. So Much in Love is a song by The Times. It's an old doo-wop song. As we strolled along together, holding hands, blah, 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 blah. So in love are we two. Something, something, I love you. So in love. It's what a voice. I sound better underwater. That's what my wife says. I sound better underwater. Timothy B. Schmidt, the bass player for the Eagles, recorded So Much in Love. He thought he was going to have a big hit with that. It was released as a single, the second single off the album. It didn't do anything, though, unfortunately. Now we're talking to a big hit, a top 10 hit off the radio. Off the album, on the radio, by the Ravens from Baltimore, Maryland, my hometown. Raised on the radio. They play the shit out of that song on local Baltimore radio. They still do it today.
Cool. They still play it, man. That's
still
really
play
cool.
it. A guy named Gerard McMahon had a song called The Look in Your Eyes. Gerard McMahon was a guy who wrote a ton of songs for the album Kiss Unmasked. If you remember that album, it looked like a lot of comic book cover panels all on it. On the outside of the album cover, Kiss Unmasked. And Gerard
songs bottles is from Kiss. It's called Naked City. That's on
Naked City was on that album.
I love that soon. Yeah,
Torpedo Girl was another Gene Simmons song, and the big single off of that, Shandy,
which I sort of Australia. My God, the Aussies love that tune.
I like that tune too. Very popish. It didn't sound like a Kiss song. Sound like a Kiss song. Speeding by the Go-Go's. They had a song on there. Don't Be Lonely by the group Quarter Flash.
Love them. Great saxophone.
Never Surrender by Don Felder, written by Kenny Loggins and Don Felder, the guitarist for the Eagles at the time, when they were living in happier times.
Yes.
Jimmy Buffett had I Don't Know, Spicoli's theme. Graham Nash, the singer from Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and the high voice you hear on all the old Hollies records. The high harmony voice in the background was Graham Nash, believe it or not. He wrote Love Is the Reason, that on the album. I'll Leave It Up to You by Poco. Great group, Poco. Fantastic country rock.
Heart of the Night, one of my favorites from Poco, man.
I love that song. Crazy Love, Heart of the Night. Just great stuff they put out. And you've got Stevie Nicks, Sleeping Angel, Donna Summer, Highway Runner, Oingo Boingo, Goodbye Goodbye. A lot of songs that you never heard of, and they never actually did anything at all.
Right.
But just a great movie. The great Ray Walston, Mr. Hand.
Mr. Aloha, Mr. Hand.
My favorite Martian, if you remember that TV series from the 60s, with Bill Bixby and Ray Walston. That was basically his claim to fame. He was a character actor, authority figure in a ton of movies and Broadway musicals. Mm-hmm. Ray Walston was just a great actor. Sorry that, if he lived, he'd probably be 100 years old now. But Ray Walston, I grew up watching that guy on My Favorite Martian, one of my favorite TV shows. Nicolas Cage made his feature film debut in this movie.
That's right.
He was an unnamed worker at Brad's at All American Burger. He was credited under his real name, Nicholas Coppola, because he is related. He's the brother of Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, shit. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz made his film debut in this movie.
Stoltz.
And Anthony Edwards of ER fame, the tall, balding doctor from ER, and the great Forrest Whitaker.
Jefferson. He played Jefferson. football
They
player.
like the second or
Asked for
third movies for each one of these guys. And Nancy Wilson of Heart has a cameo as a beautiful girl in car she's billed as, who laughs at Brad in his Captain Hook costume at the traffic
Yep.
light.
Captain Hook's Fish and Chips. Now you're required to wear the uniform, Brad. You wear that with pride.
You know who was considered for the role of Brad?
Lay
I'm
it
reading
on
this off the Wikipedia page, folks, so take it with a grain of salt. Because anybody could go in here and edit it if you have a Wikipedia account. Tom Hanks could have been Brad Hamilton, but he turned it down. Justine Bateman was offered the role of Linda, but she turned it down to star in Family Ties. And Matthew Broderick was offered the role of Spicoli, and he turned it down.
Whoa!
Ferris
Matthew
Bueller.
Broderick Spicoli.
Ferris Bueller could have been Spicoli, brother. Good Lord Almighty.
That would have been tough. That would have been. I think Sean Penn was the perfect. All right, dude, perfect Spicoli, man. But that's interesting. Matthew Broderick as Spicoli. I wonder if he could have pulled it off. Tom Hanks, I maybe could see, because remember how he was in Bachelor Party? He was kind of wild. You know, he's not like he is nowadays. If you guys are fans of Tom Hanks and haven't seen Bachelor Party, find it, please, because
Good movie.
it's hilarious as hell. There's some good stuff in there. Nick the blank.
Now I'm looking down to see who else was in this.
There's
No one of any note. No one of any note. Lana Clarkson was in this movie. She played Mrs. Vargas. You know who Lana Clarkson is?
familiar name, but I can't pinpoint her in a certain TV show or film.
Lana Clarkson was the aging blonde starlet who ate a bullet in Phil Spector's living room.
Oh, whoa.
That's the actress that he killed.
No kidding.
They say he killed.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy duty right there, man. Holy crap.
Yeah. She was, in the 1980s, she was famous for a lot of those Conan the Barbarian type movies. Not saying she was in Conan the Barbarian, but she was in movies like that. Like, sort of like the Beastmaster, things like that.
I was going to say Beastmaster. Yeah.
Yes,
Sword and the Sorcerer, Beastmaster.
Sword they called them sword and sorcery movies back then.
Yeah.
And she was in a ton of those things, especially over in Europe and direct-to-video in the United States and all that. So, hey, God bless her. Taylor Negron was the pizza delivery guy from the Pizza Guy restaurant. Taylor Negron was the guy who married Rodney Dangerfield's daughter in Easy Money.
That's
I
right.
forgot the character's name.
He was also in the movie Better Off Dead as the mailman. I don't know if
Really?
you've ever seen Better Off Dead with John Cusack, but he was the mailman in Better Off Dead too. Yeah.
Great actor. The guy
Great
was
actor.
fantastic, Taylor Negron. What do you got
Hey.
next, Motor?
Next up, one last one. Dazed and Confused soundtrack.
Ooh.
Great goddamn movie, man. It just so freaking cool. Came out at the right time. Depicts the 70s, graduation, last day of school for junior high kids that are getting ready to go to high school. The high school kids that are becoming seniors. They do initiations, go hunt the kids down. The boys get paddled with paddles they make at the wood shop, the seniors now. And then the girls have to do initiations in the parking lot where they get splattered with all kinds of shit like flour, eggs, ketchup, mustard, the whole 9 yards. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But the soundtrack is, I mean, it's a who's who list of 70s heavy hitters. And Bottles, you got that list? Go down that baby.
There was two soundtracks.
Yes,
because it was
they
the
had
first one
two.
was so popular, it sold so well. In 1993, they came back with another one in 1994 with the other songs. I guess they got the licensing for the other songs to be put on CD or album in 94. But let's go right down from the first one, 1993, the original soundtrack. Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo by Rick Derringer, one of the greatest rock of all time. Former lead singer and guitarist for... Remember the
would
group?
be-
The name of the group?
Go
You
ahead.
know the song, though, right?
I do know the song.
Say the song.
Rock. That would be. God dang it, Bottles. I'm like 5 Let's see. We said it earlier. Now I.
When we did it the first time, you know it, you SOB.
The McCoys.
Bingo. And the song was "Hang On, Sloopy."
Hang On, Sleepy by the McCoys. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And what do you know what he made money off of? He only had like 3 songs that were hits: "Hang On, Sloopy" by the McCoys, "Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo," and "I Am a Real American."
Hulk Hogan's theme song.
Hulk Hogan's theme song. He's the guy who wrote and sang and played guitar on Hulk Hogan's theme song. Real American. The great Rick Derringer. Number 2, "Slow Ride," the single version of it, 4 minutes, by Foghat.
Hey, Bottles, real
Yes, sir.
quick. You remember these? I keep looking for them too. So the band Foghat, when you went to their shows to buy merch, they had a hat that just said Fog.
Absolutely.
It was a Fog hat, dude. I've been looking for years to find one, and anybody got one out there, put it in the comments. I'd like to get it.
Dude, I saw interviews with those guys in Circus Magazine. Remember Circus Magazine from the 70s?
Absolutely.
And the 80s?
Yes.
There were interviews with Foghat, and the drummer, Roger Earl, had the big, shiny mirror aviator sunglasses that were huge, and the hat that said Fog. And I said, dude, I got to get me one of those things.
Yep,
I couldn't find it.
hat.
That's pre-internet. You couldn't find things like that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Foghat, we could do a whole
Oh my god.
half hour about Foghat. The great Lonesome Dave Peverett, who was the lead singer and the guitar player, he played a cigar box shaped guitar on stage.
Right.
It was a square, like Bo Diddley did.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the great unsung rock vocalists of all time, Lonesome Dave
Absolutely.
Peverett. Roger Earl, the drummer, was fantastic. Craig McGregor was the bass player. They had a couple of bass players in and out, but Craig McGregor spent a lot of time with them. Rod Price was the lead guitarist, the slide guitarist.
Yeah.
He had a Coors Sidon. Remember Coors Sidon, the cold medication?
Yeah. Yeah.
Came in a little glass bottle.
Yep, that's right.
He would have a Coors Sidon bottle on his finger and slide it back and forth on his strings. The man was amazing. He'd flip his hand over top of the guitar neck and slide it that way and go underneath. I've never seen anybody play guitar that fast as Roger. Rod Price was his name. Since retired, I think he passed away, unfortunately. Yes. But all the greats are gone, unfortunately. Lonesome Dave Peverett died, 10 years ago, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I think he had kidney cancer.
Yeah.
Or liver cancer, the poor bastard. He was great. Performed to the end, by the way. He looked bad, but you can still see clips of him on YouTube, folks. Foghat with Lonesome Dave Peverett. Fantastic singer. Right now they have Charlie Huhn, Huhn. Charlie Huhn is their lead singer and rhythm guitarist for Foghat. He's famous for being the lead vocalist and rhythm guitar player on the Weekend Warriors album by Ted Nugent. Remember that album?
Yes,
Ted in a blue background with smoke all around him. It was a painting of him. And the guitar, the Gibson ES, is firing bullets at the headstock of the guitar. And
the Nuge, baby.
The Nuge. And he sang lead on Need You Bad and Weekend Warriors and a few other tracks on there. The ones that Ted didn't sing lead on, Charlie Huhn sang lead on.
Nice.
He was great back then. He's kind of right now, but he's old. All these guys are like in their late 60s now. Roger Earl still was drumming, and he's here we are. We're doing a half-hour podcast on Foghat. Let's move on. School's Out. School's Out by Alice Cooper, of course. We mentioned him earlier. Great singer and shock rocker, would you say?
Yes,
in the vein of Kiss.
Absolutely. Yep.
Jim Dandy by Black Oak, Arkansas. Jim Dandy to the rescue. Tush, ZZ Top. Love Hurts by Nazareth, the old Everly Brothers tune.
Big hit for them, too. Big hit.
Yes. Boudreaux, I should say, Bryant was the writer for that. He collaborated with Roy Orbison on a lot of things. Roy Orbison actually recorded Love Hurts before the Everly Brothers did, I believe. Stranglehold by Ted Nugent. Cherry Bomb by the Runaways. One of my favorite songs, Fox on the Run by The Sweet.
Yes.
Low Rider by War. That's another one of my favorite songs. Tuesday's Gone by Skinnerd. Another one of my songs. Highway Star, Deep Purple.
Yes.
Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day, Baby by Kiss.
Yes.
Paranoid by Black Sabbath. The album was almost an hour long.
Mm-hmm.
Damn right. Now, when you go to the 1994 edition of this, let's see. We've got the Edgar Winter Group, Free Ride. Free Ride. Rented Lips. I'm sorry, folks. Rented Lips. Free Ride by Edgar Winter Group. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Alex Cooper. Living in the USA by the Steve Miller Band.
Great song.
Never Been Any Reason by Head East. I'm not familiar with their work, but you say they're fantastic.
You gotta check that song out. That's there. I would basically call them a one-hit wonder. Bottles. They had maybe a couple other minor hits, and I can't remember the names. But that song right there, cool tune. And I guarantee you, once you'll hear it, you'll recognize it.
Why Can't We Be Friends by War.
Why can't we be friends?
Great song. Summer Breeze,
Yeah.
Seals and Crofts. Hated it back then. I like it now. Funny how it is when you get older, you like stuff like that.
Right?
Right place, wrong time. I was in the right place, but it must have been a wrong time.
Dr. John.
Dr. John. And let's see, Balinese, which I'm not familiar with. It must be a blues song by ZZ Top because they're the ones who recorded it. Lord Have Mercy on My Soul by Black Arkansas. And I Just Want to Make Love to You by Foghat. And Peter Frampton must have bribed somebody. He's got two songs on this soundtrack. Show Me the Way and Do You Feel Like We Do. Peter Frampton was hot in the 70s. And I guess in 94, I don't know. I mean, Peter Frampton was ubiquitous back in the 70s, the late 70s. He was all over radio, all over TV. You couldn't turn on the TV or the radio without somebody having a clip of Frampton or one of his songs. So
I still have some albums when he was in Camel, which is some pretty good 70s rock too.
Ooh, that's the Wayback Machine right there, buddy. He was in Humble Pie for a cup of coffee.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
well, I think he was a
30
rhythm
days in the hole,
guitarist.
man. 30 days in the hole.
Yeah. Steve Marriott, what a unsung rock hero he was.
Oh my gosh, yes.
They couldn't get any traction here in the United States, could they?
No, absolutely not. And it's a shame because another one of those bands just kind of got buried into the wayside after everything else started evolving. And too bad too, because excellent band. I have a couple of live albums from them. Bitchin' energy, killer energy,
Bitchin'.
bitchin' man,
energy.
bitchin' energy.
WTF. What else you got, buddy?
Well, that's pretty much it for right now, my friend. I think we should conclude this one, being that we had some problems in the beginning, and I don't want to jinx it any more than we have to. So,
Well, folks, let's peel back the layer of the onion here first. We'll tell you all. We did this show originally, but for some reason it didn't record. So we're sitting here for an hour like a couple of schmucks, talking back and forth about what we just talked about. And it was a little bit of a different tweaks to it and all that. It was a little bit different from what we're talking about right now, but not that far removed. And we covered all the bases of what we covered earlier. But for some reason, it didn't record. So we're right back at it again, grinding away. Folks, if you like what you saw, remember, Classic Rock Echoes, we are the Squared Circle Maniacs channel right here on your YouTubes. And we're here every week. We're here a few times a week with Squared Circle Gridiron. We're here with Squared Circle Maniacs Pro Wrestling Podcast, which we dropped an episode of that yesterday. And it was chock full of news and conjecture and speculation and controversy. And we had a few cocktails during the show, too. Not gonna lie. Not going to lie. No left-handed cigarettes during the show. That came afterwards. And we'll be back at it again. I believe we're going to have one on Sunday talking about the Fastlane pay-per-view.
yes.
The Peacock. The WWE pay-per-view that's coming up on the Peacock Saturday
Looking
night. We're
forward to
gonna talk
that
about
one.
chopping that up. We also do the Squared Circle Gridiron, like I said, where Don Wayne, Dancing Donnie Wayne, and High Desert Ron, and Luscious Ricky Libs sit
right.
back and they chop up the NCAA, they chop up the NFL, and they talk about what's going on, what they like, what they hated. They call it right down the middle. But
Yes.
they call it the way they see it.
Absolutely.
Motorhead, take us home.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much people for watching, and like and subscribe, join, get a hold of us on Twitter. We're there. We also have a TikTok page, the SCM Squared Circle Maniacs TikTok. On that note, Bottles, let's hit the tour bus.